Good Tuesday morning and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft in the studios of 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV. As always, I'm joined from her home studio by Ronnie Dahl.
Hey, Tyler, it's great to talk to you again.
Yes.
I will say that I wanted to kind of check in with you yesterday, but we ran out of time. What is the status when it comes to the high school playoff status? Because I know that for us at Civic Center TV, we're a huge part of that. So
Yes.
where do things stand right now?
So where things currently stand is they are going to play their next football game. Their regional final matchups will be on Saturday this week. The regional finals will be on Friday and on Saturday. West Bloomfield's game will be Saturday at 1 o'clock p.m. That is scheduled to be at West Bloomfield High School, and Dave Scott and I will be broadcasting that here on the Big 89 on 89.3 Lakes FM and lakesfm.com, with our audio also being broadcast on Civic Center TV, on WBTV, and on the Facebook page of the West Bloomfield School District.
It's great that they actually have this platform to be able to broadcast these, but I will say we kind of talked about this throughout the broadcast as well. I'm surprised they're going forward. Are you?
I am too. I'm surprised at this point, especially considering the weather we've had in recent weeks with the below freezing temperatures, with the snow, sleet, ice mixtures that we've had. The fact that a lot of these facilities, especially at these high schools, don't exactly have the same sort of a grounds crew that you would have at the college level, certainly at the NFL level, that can keep those fields clear and safe, especially if the game is being played during inclement weather. So it makes me question it a little bit. That being said, if they can get through these next 2 weeks, the regional final and the state semifinal, then it's all good, because the state finals will all be played 3 weeks from Saturday, or 2 weeks from Saturday this week at Ford Field.
What a nightmare. But on top of this, Tyler, I have to ask is what, from your standpoint, what is the status of some of these players that have already dedicated themselves to other college teams?
So I've spoken to West Bloomfield's athletic director. I asked him about that actually yesterday out of curiosity for these games, so that we could prepare our lineup sheets and all of our information and examine some of the changes that may be coming, particularly to the West Bloomfield Lakers as they enter this restart again to their season. And it does appear that some of those guys will play for at least the next 2 weeks, the regional final and the state semifinal, but then would have graduated, received their diploma, and been ineligible for the state final. So guys like Donovan Edwards, Maxwell Hairston, they're both scheduled to play this weekend and the state semifinal should West Bloomfield win their game on Saturday against Romeo and qualify, but they would not play due to a lack of eligibility in the state championship game.
Okay, I'm not a sports person, but I still wonder, is it the same game if the players are no longer playing for you that help get you to this point? Because they're opting out because either one, early graduation, or two, they're going to play for these other teams. So you just wonder about the whole level of what it took for these teams to get to this point, but then you're going into these playoffs without the same team that you went into them with.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns. It's one of those reasons why I don't believe that they should continue their season. I didn't think they should have continued their season when the initial pause was not lifted and extended for those 12 days the first time around, simply because the competitive balance between teams like West Bloomfield High School and teams on the other side of the bracket like Belleville that have so many Division I college players that are the fabric of that team. In some cases, those key players are going to be gone, and then teams that have still a very strong roster, an excellent teams like Romeo, who West Bloomfield is playing this weekend, that maybe don't have as many key players that will be leaving at some point in the next few weeks due to a lack of eligibility because they have those opportunities are still going to be playing there. Yes, it gives everything a little more competitive balance between those top teams, those top rated teams, and ratings are arbitrary versus those teams in the middle of the road. But at the same time, it throws off that the competitive balance that was there and the momentum for these teams as they are transitioning to having many of the key guys, in West Bloomfield's case, a handful of their key players not being eligible for the state championship game. But with that, there's always that next man up mentality in football and in any sport, really. And these teams are teams. They're 52 guys. They're not 3 or 4 guys. They need to be prepared to continue to play football, and they're going to as long as they can play the game they love.
One thing about you, Tyler, is every time that we go into any type of sports talk, you're in education. And even though I live with the sports guy, you still force me to learn and to listen about the behind the scenes and the thoughts that are going into some of these decisions. So, but I think it's going to be a crazy start to the 2021 year. For some of these high school athletes, or, as they continue to try to navigate this. And it's just crazy to me that we're even here.
Yeah, it is wild, but I think it's going to be a tough adjustment coming back, having restarted practices, stopped them again because not eligibility, but the regulations in place were not exactly clear. Then coming back this week when those regulations, or the end of December, the last week of December when they were allowed to start practicing again, you have essentially 2 full weeks of practice before your games. You can restart team activities. That being said, I'm sure these players talk. These players are great friends, at least in West Bloomfield's case, and they all are heavily passionate for the game of football. I'm sure they're going on to various websites, whether it be the D Zone, whether it be MI Prep Zone, wherever they can find video on YouTube of these guys that they're playing against from Romeo for this weekend, and have been watching film and have been calling each other and texting each other and group chatting each other, whatever the case may be, to continue to study and be as prepared as possible for this game, despite not having formal team meetings, formal team film sessions and practices other than really the last week of December and through this week as they prepare for Saturday at 1 o'clock.
So with that, Tyler, I have to say my 2021 wish for you is you need your own sports show, because you have so much knowledge in that brain of yours and it's bouncing all over. It's hard for people such as me, not interested in sports, to kind of follow, but you have such a passion and such a knowledge. So I'm putting that out to the universe for you for 2021. How about that?
I like it. I like the idea. Thank you very much. I'm putting that out in the universe too. I got to work at it a little harder, and then maybe that will be something that's accomplished.
Until then, you're stuck with me on the Megacast, and if we can get with that, we should probably kind of jump into the show for Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the 2021 year. Michigan is going to be distributing 3.5 million free KN95 masks. So the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services distributing 3.5 million free masks as part of the state's Mask Up, Mask Right campaign. The masks are going to be provided by the MDHHS. They're going to be distributed by community organizations, including local MDHSS offices, health departments, and area agency on aging offices. Now, keep in mind, back at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of confusion about this. The N95 mask, those have the highest effectiveness rating. Those are only meant for healthcare workers at the higher risk settings. So the KN95, similar but slightly less effective. I will say, Tyler, I was able to get some of these through like a few months ago. It was, I think I paid like $10 a mask. It was crazy how much I paid for them. Health officials recommend the general public uses the KN95 mask, 3-layered disposable mask, or a 3-layered washable cloth mask face covering when outside the house to protect from COVID-19. They also urge people to wear the mask correctly, having it secured over the nose and the mouth, and snugly fitting without gaps. We've seen so many people without that happening. Residents who need masks can pick up one from our partner sites across the state, or you can also find a distribution site on the Michigan.gov Mask Up in Michigan site here. So that is going to be the big thing, I think, going into 2021, not only about the vaccine, but also using the correct mask. I mean, we've talked about it before, Tyler. I'm really born one of those people. I have to do the neck gaiter because the mask for me, it's like those extra steps. I like putting it around my neck and then just pulling it up, pulling it down. But they're saying that's not sufficient.
Yeah, you need to be wearing the right mask, especially as we're going into 2021. Things are getting more relaxed. People are excited about the vaccine and starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're nowhere near that. It's a tiny little light way, way out there in the ether, and we still got a long way to go before we get there. So wearing the right mask and wearing the mask correctly. It's pointless if you're wearing it under your nose, if it's not tight over your chin, if you got gaps everywhere, if you've been wearing the same surgical mask you got at your workplace or at home for the last 2 weeks, it's probably not still very effective. So doing what you can to protect yourself from other people, and more importantly, to protect your other people from you should you be contagious and be asymptomatic, is going to be critical as we get closer to the vaccine being to the general public, albeit it's going a little slower than initially anticipated to be going.
And with that, the mention of the vaccine, 128,000 Michiganders have already received the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. So in the first 3 weeks of availability, 128,390 Michiganders have received their first dose of the vaccine. That's according to the health department. State has administered 65,181 shots over the last week. That's about 9,312 vaccines per day. With that, though, Monday's update, this is coming from the health department, was the first in 5 days after the pause in reporting due to the holidays. And Lynn Sufton, we've had her on the show before. She's saying that they anticipate the vaccinations are going to move much more quickly in the coming weeks now that the holiday season has come to an end. Of the vaccines administered through Sunday, 103,940 were done so in hospitals, and 16,559 were done through local health departments, and the remainder done through some of the long-term care program, which includes CDS and Walgreens going through those pharmacies to get those vaccines administered throughout the communities and throughout the county. But I will say, looking at these numbers, Michigan still ranks pretty low across the country when it comes to we have the available vaccines, but also getting them administered. So there's a difference there too. There's so much focus on getting the vaccine, but now it's getting it out and getting it to the public. Part of that, though, Tyler, has to do with some people on the front lines, the healthcare workers or the emergency care workers, they say they don't want it just yet.
Yeah, that's certainly a challenge. Those that are refusing to get it, it's something we've talked about for a while here about the legalities that are going to come into play in 2021 regarding whether or not employers will, and certainly whether they can, force employees to get the COVID-19 vaccination before they're able to come back to work, or if they want to come back to work at all. And then on top of that, other issues are we still have a relatively high COVID-19 positive case rate in the state of Michigan. Yesterday we reported it was just about 9% from our articles on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. And on top of that, another issue remains with that, training people to administer these vaccinations, because it's in multiple cases, it's a 2-dose vaccination. It has to be handled with extreme care. It has to be administered correctly because there is a limited amount of it that is going to be distributed in each area of each part of the country. And so training is also a big issue. And with COVID-19 cases being the main focus of treatment in hospitals and other medical agencies right now, training is taking a little bit of being put on the back burner just a little bit, which is certainly going to be delaying the vaccination process.
Well, the great thing about us is that we try to not only give you the information, but also give you the resources so that you can keep up to date on those resources as well. So each and every day we do post the latest headlines on civiccentertv.com. Click on the coronavirus tab. But beyond that, if you go ahead, you'll see direct links to the CDC as well as the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and all of our local municipalities. And one of the good things about that is, like we were just talking, Tyler, about the state of Michigan, that link is going to guide you into the latest information and the latest numbers regarding the state of Michigan and our COVID-19 vaccine and cases, so that you can keep up to date and also look into the numbers that matter most to you as well. So you can find all of that on civiccentertv.com. We have a lot to get to on the Tuesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. On today's show, we are going to be speaking with the MLive Reporter that covers the state of Michigan and our economy. Looks like it's going to be a long recovery when it comes to our economy. We'll also be speaking with our good friend John McNamara. He, of course, he covers the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association, so we'll be speaking with him. Charlie LeDuff is going to be on with us in the 11 o'clock hour. Of course, I really don't need to say who doesn't know who Charlie is. So it's an honor to have him on our show. He's an investigative journalist and author. He also has a new podcast out. So we'll be speaking with him. Pamela Good will be with us. She's Beyond Basics, which is a literacy nonprofit organization, and the importance of their work and also how they're managing during this pandemic. But also we'll be checking in with the Bowling Centers Association in the 11 o'clock hour. So we have a great show ahead for you in the Tuesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast, but we're going to take a quick break and then we'll get the show started.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus-test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
The only way to beat COVID-19 is to face it.
You can't get too comfortable.
You can't forget the danger.
Wear the mask. Wear the mask.
Wear the mask. Wash your hands.
Keep a safe distance.
Especially in the next few months.
You know we'll get back to normal.
We'll get back to normal.
We'll get back to normal.
Someday.
But not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But not yet.
But not yet.
Consider virtual gatherings for the holidays.
Curbside food orders.
Grocery delivery.
And shopping local. Shop local.
And especially shopping local.
Let's beat this virus. We can if we face it together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together. Together.
For the latest information, visit oakgov.com/COVID.
great to have you with us on the Oakland County Megacast. For those that may be joining us for the first time, Tyler and I are here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon, live, giving you long, in-depth interviews with all things related to COVID-19. We try to interview people who are decision makers, lawmakers, business makers, and those within the knowledge and in the know of this pandemic, because 10 months plus into this crisis, we're still navigating it, and the information changes each and every day. And while the vaccine did bring hope in 2021, the pandemic is not going to be over before Michigan's economy fully recovers. And to talk more about that, we want to go ahead today on the Megacast and bring in Taylor Dussimore. He is with MLive, and he covers Michigan's economy. It's great to have you with us again. I think the last time we had you on, you had just started in your position.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year for sure. I started the year covering Jackson, and then I transitioned to cover the business and economy. And then for a few weeks during the election, I was transitioned again to cover the Secretary of State's office. And now we're back to the economy and business. So it's been a little bit of everything, but I appreciate you guys having me on today.
So Taylor, I read one article and they were saying that it's looking like the pandemic may be over by the time that Michigan's economy recovers, because we're looking at 2022, 2023 before we actually get back to some of these pre-pandemic numbers?
Yeah, it's going to take a while. I've talked to a few economists in recent weeks, and I say after we had the biggest job losses and business closures in March and April, we started having the biggest gains back in May and June. So you could really see the swing back up was very strong. But since then, it's really started to taper off. We've kind of already got the low-hanging fruit in terms of the businesses that temporarily closed. So it's going to be a much slower recovery. I think the key is once things can be open again, and once people aren't worried about catching the virus in public, whether they're vaccinated or the numbers are lower, I think that's going to be really the key to helping these businesses recover. But still, it's going to take probably until 2022, 2023 until we see until we're really back to kind of where we were before. One good thing is it's going to open up some opportunities for entrepreneurs. If half of your city's restaurants closed, obviously that's a terrible thing, but that also gives some opportunities once there's demand again for people to start things up.
Because we did have Callie on with us a few weeks ago, and he talked about it. He said actually the number of people filing for new LLCs is up. So yeah. Do you think, is that a part, while it's hopeful, a lot of people will file for an LLC, but that business may never actually make it to fruition or even to profitability?
Yeah, we actually saw record numbers of new businesses start up this summer. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because sometimes for people to really get pushed to start their own business, maybe they've been thinking about it for years and they haven't been sure about, should I start this? If they get laid off from their job, maybe now's the time to start it, So there's a lot of people starting cottage industry type things, and a lot of those LLCs maybe aren't ones that are going to have employers or employees. So maybe you're just starting up a cookie business, but you're the only employee. So while it's good to see a new business start up and something local like that, it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be employees that come along with it.
Yeah, so we should say, because I have an LLC that I started a couple years ago, it's a quick process. It's an online process. I think it costs $50, and whether or not you take it to the next step or not, but some people do it just out of having that first step beyond them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe it's something that you can do while you're in between jobs. You can sell something or pick up take one of your hobbies and kind of monetize it a little bit, but it might not be something that's a long-term thing, but you never know. Sometimes things can blossom out of these from something small.
And so you mentioned while you're in between jobs, so we can talk about the unemployment right now in the state of Michigan. Things were looking up. We were kind of on the upswing But then when the governor shut down the indoor dining and the restaurants, and I know a lot of people say, well, the restaurants could still be open, but they don't understand the impact of that. Where do things stand in the unemployment arena here in the state of Michigan?
Yeah, so there's nearly 1 million people unemployed in Michigan right now, and out of 10 million people in the state, that's still quite a lot. Like you said, once the latest restrictions started up again in November or so with closing down restaurants and things like that, it kind of led to an increase again. There's so many different unemployment numbers out there. One you might see is only about 4%, but that's just state unemployment. There's a lot of people who are on federal unemployment dollars, whether it's through the PUA program or the extended benefits or something like that. So there's a lot of different numbers out there. But basically just know this, there's still a lot of people on unemployment. And the good news is that unemployment has been, the extra benefits because of the pandemic have been extended both on the state mostly and on the federal side. So there's still a lot of different avenues for unemployment. Plus the $300 extra is going into effect. So obviously in this last spring, we had people getting an extra $600. Then for a while, they were just getting the normal amount. And now they're getting the extra $300 again too. Coming soon. So that's good news for people who are out of work, but obviously there's no substitute for actually having full-time employment.
So what are you hearing from employers? Because I do remember when so many people were getting that extra $600 from the federal government, they were having a hard time getting employees to come back to work, but that went away. And now even with the additional $300, is that still enough of an initiative to keep people that were unemployed to stay on unemployment?
Yeah, you're right. Especially in the spring, there was a lot of employers complaining, hey, my employers aren't even making my employees aren't even making half of what they can make on unemployment. Why would they want to come back? I haven't been hearing as much of that this time around with just $300. It's still probably maybe a little bit more than a lot of employees were making before, but it's more comparable. And I've actually heard some employers that are really pushing for things like this extra $300 because they really feel bad about laying off their staff. But if they know that they're going to be taken care of and going to be able to pay their bills, then it makes it a little easier to lay off people temporarily, knowing especially the ones that are kind of like the family businesses and the local businesses, that they feel a lot better about laying people off for a short period of time if they know they're going to be taken care of.
Taylor DesOrmeau with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. He's an MLive reporter that has the daunting task of covering Michigan's economy right now in the middle of a pandemic. And with that, what do you think is going to be the outlook, long-term outlook for the state of Michigan coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We have a story coming out later this week looking at Michigan's economy in 2020 and the damage the pandemic has done by the numbers. So we're looking at things like unemployment. That's obviously a big one. We're looking at consumer spending, small businesses, job postings, things like that. So there's a lot we're going to be looking at. One thing that's really interesting to kind of dive into is kind of who has been really hurt most by this pandemic. And when you look at the types of jobs, obviously hospitality ones, whether it's restaurants or hotels and things like that, those types of employees are obviously hurting more because those are the businesses that are suffering. But when you look at the amount of unemployment by what type of, if they're a high wage or medium wage or low wage workers, it's really interesting because the high wage, everyone pretty much took a dip in March when there was a lot of jobs that were going away. But some of the more white collar jobs where you can maybe transition to work from home easier, those are the jobs that really recovered the fastest. And same kind of with the medium wage, I kind of think about manufacturing or construction. Those came back after about a month or so as well, obviously with some restrictions and mask wearing and things like that. But it's really the low wage ones that are really kind of suffering the most. Obviously, a lot of those are back too. But I think about restaurants and in the hospitality industry specifically, and low wage workers are the ones that are suffering the most. And what's interesting is when you think back to like the 2008 recession, it was a lot of the medium and high wage workers that were out of work. So there's people that were with the auto industry, whether they were in the offices or or on the manufacturing line, and now it's the lower wage workers. So it's interesting to see how the rebound will look different. I've talked to some people that said, if this were the high wage workers that were all out of business right now and weren't getting paid, the $2,000 stimulus would be a no-brainer. But with it, the low wage, it's more in debate. But anyways, I think we're looking at, it's going to be a little while. We hope that in the coming months, once the pandemic starts to taper off, that the economy will take a similar upswing.
But I look at that, Taylor, too, and I know people on both ends of the spectrum. And you look at the people that most need this, and they are being the most desperately hurt during this time. But some of them also don't qualify, because these jobs in the restaurants were the jobs that were their extra jobs, right? They were maybe working another part-time job where they can still work at retail or this, that, and the other. But it was when you were working in the restaurants and the bars, those were the jobs that put food on your table, helped you pay your rent, and help in those other, fill that gap. And a lot of those people, like, when you're talking about $600, it's a slap in the face. Like, you're telling me I can't work. And when people are saying, just go get another job, we see these signs for help wanted. But when you tell them, I work in the restaurant industry and I want to go back, these employers don't want to hire you and train you because they know you're going to leave when the restaurants are being able to reopen, because for them, they make on, so much of their salary is going to be based on tips, right? Mm-hmm. So am I going to stick in a $12, $13, $14 hour job that's secure, or which I'm going to have to make, work 30 extra hours a week to make what I was making 15, 20 hours a week in a bar or a restaurant? Mm-hmm. And unemployment doesn't fill that gap.
Yeah. And so many of these layoffs are supposedly temporary. People are like, well, once my business gets back up and going, I'm going to have a job and whatnot. So it's just going to be for a couple weeks. And obviously things have gone a lot more than a couple weeks. So, but when you're expecting to have your job back, you're not really looking for a new job. But then when things go longer than you expected them to, it really puts people in a pickle. And then when you do have two jobs too, that just makes filing for unemployment so much harder. Or if you just recently left a job to go to a new job and then you get laid off from the new job, then the old job, they're like, well, you left a job, so you're not eligible for unemployment. So I know we talked in past months about how much of a mess the unemployment system is, and it's still a headache. They're getting through calls a little quicker, but it's still definitely a pain in the butt for people.
Yeah, and can we touch on that a little bit? Where do things stand with the unemployment system here in the state of Michigan? Because they had a change in leadership recently. The guy just said, it was like he threw up his hands and said, forget it, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it was really sudden.
Where does that leave the employees and the people that rely on the system?
Yeah, most of the talk lately has been about the unemployment trust fund, which normally doesn't sound very exciting, but has really become thrown into the spotlight lately. So basically, there's this fund that employers pay into every year. And if they lay off more people, then they have to kind of contribute more the next year. So going into this year, there was $4.6 billion in this unemployment trust fund, which was one of the best of all the states. So Michigan was doing really well. Now we're at about $730 million. So we've exhausted about 80% of it. That's a concern to a lot of people. First off, there's a checkpoint. When the fund goes below $2.5 billion, then all the employers have to pay more the next year. So they're not happy about that, clearly. But once it goes below zero, people are still getting their benefits. It doesn't affect that at all. But then the state government has to get a loan to pay for the unemployment, and then the employers end up having to pay more as well. So it's really a mess. So the thing that's kind of been in the spotlight the past week or two is whether Michigan residents should get 26 weeks of unemployment or 20 weeks. Normally it's 20, but during the pandemic, the Governor Whitmer made it 26 weeks. The deal kind of ended up being that that the legislature made is, we'll give you 26 weeks, but also the state needs to pay $200 and some million to cover those extra weeks. And the legislature agreed on that, the Republicans and Democrats, but when it came time to be signed by the governor, she said, no, we're not spending $200 million on what normally the businesses would pay for. So she cut the funding, but that also cut the extra 6 weeks. So there's lots of drama and debate kind of about that. Oh, you're taking 6 weeks of unemployment off the table for people, but also there's this money that we need for other things. So long story short, anyone who's been on unemployment starting in 2020, they'll still get their full 26 weeks of state unemployment. But anyone who's going on unemployment starting this week, you might only get 20 weeks unless something changes in the next couple months with the legislature.
So Taylor, I don't need to put you on the spot because I know that you're kind of new on this beat, but you're also a reporter. And a lot of what we talk about is information that the state is feeding people. They're feeding the public, and they're feeding you as a reporter as well. Mm-hmm. And we understand the deadlines and the pressure that our mainstream media are under. But in all honesty, what are you doing and what are you digging into for the accuracy of the information that the state is feeding you? Or are you just, you can be honest, we understand. It's like, look, I was a mainstream media person. I get it. Like, you've got to turn it. You have deadlines. What are you doing behind the scenes to dig into the information and the numbers that they're giving you? And should people follow you on your social media accounts to try to get that information?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the cool things that's really been enlightening is we get a lot of emails from people who are on unemployment, and the unemployment system from the state may say, hey, things are running smoothly, it's going great. But when you get dozens of emails from people who are on unemployment saying otherwise, it's a pretty good clue, hey, there's a problem. So we're able to connect with a lot of people who are having troubles with the system, and sometimes it's just a one-off, and other times it's indicative of a larger problem. So that's one thing. Another good thing is because Michigan is split by Democrat and Republicans pretty evenly, you usually, there's always two sides to a story, right? So for example, last week, the governor said, hey, me signing this bill isn't going to affect anyone's unemployment. And the Republicans said, well, yes, it is. It's going to go from 26 weeks to 20 weeks. So we had to kind of do our research. We had both sides there and had to figure out who is kind of giving us smoke and mirrors here and what's the actual truth. And usually it's somewhere in the middle. So I think the important things are talking to people who are actually experiencing the system, like people who are laid off and unemployed. Also, sometimes it comes down to reading the bills and reading the fine print, because sometimes they'll say one thing in a press release, but you never know what the actual fine print is going to be and how it affects people. So I think that's another key part too.
Well, Taylor, it's great to have you with us. And I will say, as someone who's been in your spot, never take their press release. Do the research and go with the people. I remember back in the day, I was like, no, the government can't be wrong. All these people. No, always go with the people. They are experiencing what they are experiencing because of the backlog and the red tape and the government BS. So follow the people, be the voice of the people, and you have a big job ahead of you. So we want to say thank you for being with us, and thank you also for you and your MLive team for trying to get the story out there. But I do implore you, dig a little bit deeper than the BS numbers. I'm sorry. We're going to have Charlie LeDuff on with us here a little bit later. So that's why I'm saying BS, because that's the name of his podcast. But dig a little deeper and you'll see, just go with the people, because that's who you represent.
So yeah, well, I appreciate you having us on. Feel free to, anybody can follow me on Twitter at @DesOrmeau. And if you're experiencing this unemployment, anybody out there, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear your story and hear what the people are actually experiencing instead of just the press release part of it. But Happy New Year to everybody, and thank you so much for having me on.
Happy New Year to you as well. You have a big job ahead of you.
Thank you so much.
But you're doing a great job. So welcome to the team.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast. And when we come up, our next guest is going to be the Vice President of the Government Affairs for the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association, John McNamara. He is a good friend here on the Oakland County Megacast. So we'll get the real deal with what the Restaurant and Lodging Association is experiencing here in the state of Michigan. You are listening to and watching the Oakland County Megacast.
Perry tested positive for COVID-19. Emma was exposed to a friend who's positive. Willa's waiting on test results. After any contact with COVID-19, or if you test positive, stay home for at least 10 days. If you live with others, keep your distance and wear a mask. Help Michigan contain COVID-19. Visit michigan.gov/contain-COVID.
COVID-19 has caused many families to fall behind on finances and on groceries, but you're not alone. You shouldn't have to worry about putting food on the table. MyBridges offers access to quality food and income assistance to help families across the state get the food support they need. It's easy to apply and easy to start shopping. Apply for services at michigan.gov/MIBridges. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/contain-COVID. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in to the Oakland County Megacast. Just so you know, you can catch us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Also, if you have cable, thank you, Comcast. Tune us into Channel 15, Channel 99 if you have AT&T. But we also want to say, if you're out driving around in your car, you can tune us into 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff, or even if you have one of those old school radios still in your home, that's where you'll find us on the radio dial as well. So we want to say thank you for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We also want to say thank you to our last guest. He has a big job ahead of him trying to cover Michigan's economy for MLive, but also our next guest is in the trench of this crisis because while most businesses have been allowed to reopen here in the state of Michigan, bars and restaurants remain closed to indoor dining, and that is putting more and more businesses on the brink of closure. So joining us again, our good friend here, John McNamara. He is the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. Thank you for being with us here on the Megacast. Where do things stand now? Because are these businesses losing hope at this point?
I would say, first of all, thank you for having me and Happy New Year to you and your listeners. It depends. So since March, when COVID first came to Michigan and came to the country, restaurants have been closed for 143 days since March, and they've been closed for coming up on 60 days since the November 1st closure. So we've already lost close to 3,000 restaurants, and that number is going to continue to grow, unfortunately. So some are continuing to fight. Some have said, I talked to a business owner today in East Lansing who said, he decided in November simply just to shut down and hope to weather through, until January 15th when hopefully they can open again. But, there's also good news up front. Obviously, the, U.S. Congress appropriated more money for the Paycheck Protection Program, and the state appropriated money both for business owners and their employees. So, there are some bright spots, but obviously there's still a long way to go until, this industry and really the state of Michigan and the world is back to normal, whatever that normal looks like.
So, John, though, in one of the last press conferences before the end of the year, the governor hinted at the prospect of, if these numbers continue to go down, there could be the possibility that maybe some of these restrictions would be lifted. So do you think that's going to happen? Because I also kind of feel like some of these restaurant and business owners are being penalized for people that were traveling or gathering over the holidays, and they weren't doing it at the restaurants.
So yeah, I mean, our members are in a tough spot, and restaurateurs are in a tough spot, all over, and not just in Michigan, really everywhere in the country. We had some good conversations with the governor's office yesterday about how we believe we can reopen, and we can reopen safely and continue to have positive dialogue as we have this entire time. So we're hopeful that maybe we can see a slightly earlier opening, obviously with some type of restrictions. And, our members are ready and willing to do that, as they've been ready and willing to do everything else that's been asked of them thus far. But you bring up an interesting point of, restaurants seem to be, tagged as this super spreader and this, that, and the other. But they're really not taking into consideration where people have been. They could have been at the gym, they could have been at the office, they could have been at the grocery store, they could have been at the hardware store. But also, and I will continue to argue that it is safer for people to gather in a restaurant where they're going to have their mask on if they're not, actively eating or drinking. And groups are limited as to, if you go to a party at someone's house in someone's basement, you're not going to wear your mask. There's not going to be any restrictions, and people are going to behave as they have for their entire lives.
So with that, though, I will say, and that goes back to the data, right?
Yep.
Because one of the things that I have noticed in all of this is, while they are naming certain schools, they're not naming any of the businesses or restaurant or stores, retail stores, and these other outlets where some of these outbreaks that they think could be happening. But it's like you said, at the end of the day, you can never pinpoint exactly where an individual got the virus, right? So it's basically like this assumption process. But we do know the main part of this, the latest numbers, according to the state data, is that nearly 50% is coming from our nursing homes and our long-term facilities.
Yeah, and luckily they are, those are groups of people who if they have not been vaccinated yet, they will be in the near future, and hopefully, that process continues to evolve, and we can work toward reopening. But I'm sure I'm not the only one who walked around Somerset Mall at some point in the month of December, and you saw people sitting in benches eating, standing eating, no masks on, walking all over. So we continue to advocate that restaurants can and will open safely when we're allowed to, and have continued to be safe throughout this entire process.
So I think you bring up a great point there, is that while they have allowed some places to reopen, such as movie theaters and bowling alleys and ice skating rinks, some of these other areas, it was without concessions.
Yep.
But they have continued to allow for the malls to allow for the restaurants to be open. So what is your thoughts and your feelings on that?
I mean, we obviously...
the holiday season, right?
Yep.
Like, it was crazy busy.
Yeah, on the movie theater note, 85% of movie theater revenue comes from concessions. So you're seeing most movie theaters not even choose to open because they make their money on popcorn, pop, and candy. They don't make their money on the ticket. And in terms of a mall food court being open, we believe that, our members should be treated the exact same. That, if they're allowed to be open in a mall because it's considered takeaway dining, that, our members who throughout this entire process have sanitized, have invested tens of thousands of dollars into sanitizing systems and, separating booths and plexiglass and PPE, and had companies come in and redo everything, that they should be given the same opportunity as, a mall food court, or, still you can sit down in a hospital cafeteria and have a meal.
With that, where do things stand? You said you just had some discussions with the governor's office. Where do things stand with that? Do you think, because they did hint if the numbers were to decrease, that maybe, possibly, maybe they would allow for things to reopen earlier? Do you think that's going to happen? Or
I think if it does, it will only be a couple of days, and we will take those couple of days because, right now, every couple of days matter. I talked to a business owner today who said a few $1,000s a week, which could be 25%. He goes, could make the difference between my business partners and I making it and not, because, we have officially put in everything we have to get through this, and we simply don't have, we don't have the money to do it again. So even 25% on a few $1,000s could make a difference. So we're hopeful that, I'm assuming the governor at some point will have a press release or a press conference this week, and hopefully we'll see some brighter days ahead from there.
We definitely hope so. And we are also hearing, and we've interviewed some of the business owners, and while they say, hey, it's great how the politicians like to stand behind a press release or the platform announcing these latest grants available to some of these small businesses, they're nearly impossible to actually get because the need is so great right now.
So that is frustrating. Luckily, I think in combination with paycheck protection and this next round of funding, I think a lot of people will be able to get it. The past couple grants were only, were $10 to $15 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you have businesses from across the state applying, it really isn't. So this next round is $55 million and $45 million for employees. So hopefully with some more money in combination with an additional recapitalization of paycheck protection, we'll be able to get money in the hands of not only business owners, but their employers and their employees and their team members. And then, if we can reopen at limited capacity in January 15th and continue to build, and, spring can get here quick and summer. And then, I think much like myself, I'll be happy to put COVID in the rearview mirror and, move forward.
Oh my gosh, won't we all? I will say, John McNamara here with us on the Oakland County Megacast. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. And I will say, John, so I had the opportunity to go out to a couple of our local restaurants that do have the igloos. And really, it's like, that meme that's going around. Only in Michigan can you have an inside that goes outside to go inside. And you do kind of feel where there's nothing being done to say that the people inside the igloo are within one household. And they may say, hey, we can't go into the igloo, but we're passing it to you in the igloo. I'm so confused over this whole dynamic of the outdoor, indoor dining. Can you shed some light?
Sure. So, as the order was written, the igloo counts as long as you're within the same household, and that would require, the two people in there, or the maybe three if you can fit it, to be honest and forthcoming. So, that onus was put on the individual to go from there. But then in terms of a tent, in order to be compliant, you would need to have 3 of the 4 sides of the tent up, and you could have a roof. Or, more and more you're seeing restaurants that have garage doors maybe on the exterior. And if you had your garage doors open and you could have one of them closed or a back wall and a roof, you're in compliance. But, obviously it was 30 degrees yesterday in Michigan. Not a lot of people want to sit outside with 3 or 4 walls up. In order to sit outside and, enjoy a meal. I've done it a couple different times. I did it Sunday at a place here in East Lansing. But, it was cold, but it was also a nice way to be outside. And, they just had fire pits by every table. So, this industry continues to find creative ways to work around this and stay open. And, some of our members are frustrated. They're all scared, but at the same time, they're all focused on, getting to January 15th and continuing to be open and, serve the communities they serve.
Yeah, but on top of that, John, what are the chances? We're not talking about the employees that everyone wants to say, oh my gosh, they're getting unemployment. But for some of them, this unemployment is maybe $100 a week, or $150 a week. That is not going to pay their rent. That is not going to keep food on their tables. And they can't get another job to supplement that income. So, and that's just on the employee front of all of this. When you guys are doing your talks with the governor and people of her team, are they getting that? Because these are the people that are falling in between the cracks of the unemployment system as well.
They do. And I mean, I think the governor and her team are in a very tough place. And not to say that we haven't had our disagreements over the past, 8 months, because we absolutely have. But, they're trying to run a state, prevent a pandemic from spreading, and, keep probably hundreds of balls in the air at the same time. So, I mean, they are in contact, they are listening. But at the same time, obviously, the veto of the $220 million is going to delay some unemployment. And Michigan's unemployment system is just quite simply not nimble enough to handle a situation like this. And I don't know if there is one in the country that is. It's just, obviously no one's been through a pandemic before. So I think obviously some changes will be made, have to be made moving forward. But we're going to learn a lot from this as a country, as a state, as a society, as an industry, of hopefully never have to do it again. But I think if we do have some processes in place that will make it cleaner and smoother for, again, the next time, I hope never happens.
We all hope the next time
Right.
never happens, right? And I will say that is kind of the hope in 2021 with the vaccine. I will say this conversation, you seem a little bit softer on your stance with the governor and her team. So my guess is, if I can read between the lines a little bit, is that maybe there's some positivity between there that she's going to lift this before the 15th.
I think there's some positivity heading forward. And also there were some great pieces of legislation in lame duck that were passed and that she signed. One of them was House Bill 5770, which would require third-party delivery companies such as Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub to get the permission of the restaurant before listing them on their mobile app or website. And Michigan was the second state to do that. She signed the $45 million employee fund that MRLA's foundation is administering. She signed $55 million for, business owners. So some positive steps have been made, and, we're looking forward to continuing to build that relationship with the governor. And, again, she's been in a tough spot. I will never deny that. As an association, we disagree with some of the decisions she's made, but at the same time, we're not sitting in that seat either. So looking forward to better days and continued to work with the governor.
So, John, I'm going to leave you with one thought, is that you're talking about one thing with the governor. She's in a tough spot. All of this has to surround the businesses and the restaurants, because you cannot go in and with a mask. So I'm going to tell you, my sister created, and my sister is just a regular person, by the way. She's not an entrepreneur. She's just my sister. She came up with a mask. And you can eat and you can drink. So I can drink a drink, and I can eat, and I can keep my mask on, and then in between my bites, I can put my mask up, and I can just continue about my business. So in the argument sake of the whole restaurant industry, and everything that's going on, I'm like, she's found a solution, and she's just a regular person.
Right. I think she should go on. She should go on Shark Tank. This has Shark Tank written all over it.
Right. So hey, if you want some, if somebody of your businesses want some, but I will tell you, especially like if you want to drink a drink, you want to eat a bite, you can do it, and you can just. But she's been through people, and it's got the little double tab and this, that, and the other. But it really was about being able to, because they love eating out, and it's like, and because I'm sorry, BYOB, bring your own blanket.
Right.
That is not working, especially for people who are kind of at the higher end of the economic
It's not.
spectrum, right? They don't get that as much, but this could be our solution. So
It could be. I'm gonna
John,
hope.
I'm gonna
hope it doesn't come to that. But
and I'm going to bring I'm going to BYOM. I'm going to bring my own mask that allows me to eat and drink between my drinks and my eats.
Perfect.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. But before we let you go, can I just say any indication that the governor may end the shutdown the way that it is mandated right now for the bars and the restaurants before the 15th, possibly?
I think it's possible. I think she probably has a press conference sometime this week and make some announcements. I think that's one of them. So if that's the case, we'll be ready. Hopefully, we'll get as much notice as possible because, you have people who their freezers are empty, their fridges are empty. They took out, all the beer taps are unhooked. So, it's going to take these people 5 days, if not longer, to even get up to minimal operations. So hopefully that happens, and hopefully we get some heads up for our members.
And that is the big indication is people don't understand there's a supply chain that goes
absolutely.
on behind this. You don't just walk in, turn on the light switch and say we're open. There are things that go behind that.
Absolutely.
To make sure that happens as well.
Yeah, and even for Gordon's and Cisco and the food providers, there's a supply chain issue that, it's going to take them a couple of weeks to have product ready to go and be delivered. So I will just say when restaurants are allowed to be reopened, if they don't have your favorite thing on the menu, have some other ideas ahead and, just be ready and be flexible because it will be slightly different. It's not just going to be, hey, go ahead, we're open. And it's how it was, maybe in October or so. It's going to be different for the first couple of weeks and everyone just needs to be ready and okay with that.
Well, with that, Johnny, we'll tell you, you can go ahead, and if you need a mask, I'll send it to you. And
okay.
You tell the governor that, no, you can reopen the bars and the restaurants and still keep your mask on because it is possible. It's just we have to rethink our framework, right?
For sure.
Exactly. Yep. Well, it's great to have you on with us. I know that you guys have a big job ahead of you as well. But again, if you get any heads up, if you'll let us know, you're always a great friend here on the Megacast, and we appreciate it.
We'll let you know for sure.
John McNamara with us here on the Megacast. He, of course, is with the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. We always appreciate your time. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, but before we go, we want to remind you, you're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. When we come back, you need to tune in to this next interview. I'm excited to have Charlie LeDuff with us when we return here on the Megacast.
Hi. My name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
The only way to beat COVID-19 is to face it.
You can't get too comfortable.
You can't forget the danger.
Wear the mask. Wear the mask.
Wear the mask. Wash your hands.
Keep a safe distance.
Especially in the next few months.
We'll get back to normal.
We'll get back to normal.
We'll get back to normal.
Someday.
But not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But not yet.
But not yet.
Consider virtual gatherings for the holidays.
Curbside food orders.
Grocery delivery.
and shopping local.
Shop local.
And especially shopping local.
Let's beat this virus. We can if we face it together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together. Together.
For the latest information, visit oakgov.com/COVID.
Tuning in to the Tuesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in my home studios. Mr. Tyler Keefe holding things down back in the studios there in West Bloomfield. For those that don't know, the Megacast actually developed out of the pandemic. Way back at the end of March, Tyler and Dave Scott decided to do the show as a way to try to inform our public about everything and anything regarding COVID-19, but also bringing you long-form interviews with all of the decision makers, our lawmakers, our business makers, but also people of interest here in the middle of our COVID-19 crisis and how they are handling it. And here 10 months later, it is still going on. They never anticipated it would be going on this long. And that's kind of how I got involved, but also we are continuing their mission to bring you these interviews. And one of the most interesting guests I think that we will probably ever have on the show, but also someone I am highly excited to bring on the show as well. Our next guest, he is real, he is raw, and he is passionate. Charlie LeDuff, he's an award-winning investigative journalist, an author, and now even a podcaster. He's with us this morning here on the Oakland County Megacast. And also we are former co-workers as well. Charlie, I should probably mention that. I'm honored and pleased to have you with us here on the Megacast.
Thanks for having me on. It's a shame I had to beg to come on it. It's, you know what I mean? It's such an awesome big deal. You know, thanks for having me on.
He's being sarcastic. I had to beg him to come on. But Charlie, one of the one question I always get when I'm out in public and I see people and they're always like, where's Charlie LeDuff? What are you doing? You're actually doing bigger and better things. It's just maybe not in the forefront of what people are used to. So yeah. What are you doing right now?
Well, here's the modern world and here's modern media journalism. All you got to do is go online and put my name in and you'll see. I love when people do it on Facebook. Where you been? And I said, all you got to do is scroll down and you'll see where I've been. But I'm a columnist at Deadline Detroit with Alan Langle over there. It's a news site backed by Pete Carmanos. I do have a podcast, but we've got investors now. The thing's really starting to take off. It's called the No Bs Newshour. So it's basically a radio show that we're turning into a TV show. Look online, because that way we don't have any masters. The only master is getting it accurate and being interesting. So I know all of us being, a person in media, a lot of it is soft. A lot of it takes a side. A lot of it's afraid. It's a wait and see. And to me, if you ever watched The Wire, it was an old Baltimore Sun reporter named David Simon. And yeah, there you go. Exactly, Ryan. Probably the first great television show with an arc to it. He said, with the collapse of media, advertising, all of that for the oligarchs and the government, they're going to have a field day for about a decade. The corruption's going to run wild. Information's not going to be at your fingertips until we figure out how to make journalism profitable again. Because in the Constitution, they leave money for the judiciary, the legislative body, the executive. They mention the press, but there's never any money for us. So you have to figure out how to fund it. So now you're back, Ronnie, and it's basically, through the government, and it's just trying to figure out where to go. But more now than ever, I think we can all see it, what we've been through, that there needs to be a counterbalance and a challenge to what's being fed to us, because that's just not going to make the country go right. So I'm online. I'm a columnist. I wrote another book. It was a bestseller. show. I'm probably working on another one, and I'm doing a podcast.
So
and
you actually wrote, Charlie, so you wrote 2 books.
I've written
because
4.
I have them both. Well, you wrote 4. So I have 2 of the 4. But I will say the one for me was Detroit, the American Autopsy. You have to get this book. For the people out there, you need to get this book. It's a real deal. It's raw. And as a reporter who was mainstream at the time, general assignment, you cover Detroit each and every day, but you don't see Detroit in the same eyes as someone such as yourself. But your voice, to me, is probably one of the most important voices that's still left in Detroit. And when we talk about mainstream journalism, it's gone. If I haven't talked to one reporter, I've talked to 50 reporters that they know the old model doesn't work anymore because they no longer get to tell the real stories and uncover the real truth. We were the muckrakers. Our point was to be the watchdogs. In journalism, you don't get to be the watchdogs, but you are still a watchdog. What was it like for you to have to walk away from mainstream media to continue what you're doing?
That's a good question. I don't think I walked away from mainstream journalism because that's what I am. You know, I'm just a mainstream, middle of the road guy, living his life, worried about his kid, worried about his, his home and how he's going to make the bills and then can I get the kid to college. But it's just, it seems to me that in all of the mainstream media we're talking about, there are still some killers. There are, we know them, they're friends of ours. Individuals are out there rocking it. The institutions themselves are kind of falling apart, doing buyouts, hiring young people who are smart, but they drowning them in so many stories. Look when you pull the newspaper out or watch local TV, what do you get? One story, next story, next story, next story, next story, next story. It's about 30 seconds or it's about that long, and you're sitting there consuming it, wondering, well, who, what, where, when, why, how? And there's no time for it. I also think I won't blame reporters. You'll take a check where you can get it. I kind of blame the people that run it. I think they're like drunks at a blackjack table that have 3 chips left and their plane's going to take off in Vegas and come back home. And they're trying to make it till that plane and they're dealt 2 aces and they decide not to split them, but to, say, I've got 2, hit me again, hit me again. Now more than ever is the time to experiment and see if you can create the new presentation, not the new journalism, because journalism is facts more than, if you get it wrong, if people listening, if I get it wrong, you're not going to listen anymore, not credible. That is always rule number 1. But rule number 2, which can never supplant rule number 1. Rule number 2 is you can't be boring. You can't be superficial. If you do, they're going to leave. And so now what are we left with? Partisan, I'm on the left, I'm on the right. There's nobody in the middle there standing brave enough to tell you, for instance, nothing at Cobo was fraudulent that night of the votes. Nothing was fraudulent. I was there working as a reporter, but also as a vote counter, not an observer, not a Democrat, not a Republican. I busied myself to know the process, the computer flow chart of this thing. And when you put that out there, okay, people that want to believe there was something nefarious at Cobo hate you. And then when you talk about the governor's tepid, bad response to the nursing homes and COVID, then the left will get you. But this is the truth. And you have to have guts in the modern era to tell the truth.
There are so many things that I want to talk about with you. I don't know where to start, but I will say the one thing when you say reporter, but we also see these people that are influencers. I will say, I was appalled today when the last few days, the GMA, Good Morning America, they're doing these spots with influencers. They have no background, no education. They're just influencers. And that is their expert. And I'm like, this is where we are. This is where we are in America right now.
So on that bit, they had like influencers, basically hipsters sitting around their computer, like commentating on stuff going around the world that they have no part of, right?
Yeah. I think yesterday's influencer was about, I don't know, like weight loss. And today's influencer actually had to do with your financial responsibility in the new year. You're an influencer. Like, why are we listening to them? But why are we giving them a platform on national media? I don't get it.
Probably because the national media, as its audience atomizes, right, and moves online. Again, just go to Google. You can find everybody. It's ratings. Now, I don't mind an influencer being on. Like, I don't mind talking to Angelina Jolie about, Darfur. That's cool. But you're not the expert. Now, if they're bringing them on and all of a sudden the influencer's the expert, we have a problem. So when I'm doing the podcast, which it's got 100,000 listeners, it's 1 hour a week, but we don't do commenting on Ted Cruz. We're going to get Ted Cruz, or I'm going to do a story on Ted Cruz. We're still going to be the reporter. I don't see, everybody's talking and nobody's doing. Everybody's sitting around in COVID with an opinion based on what the next guy said, based on what the last chick said, based on what the last dude said. It's too much talk and not enough doing. So I agree with you. That's why I don't watch it.
But on top of that, though, I will say, Charlie, when you're talking about your podcast, for those that don't know, again, it's the No BS Newshour. You can get it on Apple or whatever your podcast is. Please download it because it supports independent investigative journalism. But on top of that, you're not only bringing in these people for these very raw and very real conversations, I have to say. I was listening to your latest podcast, and it was the year end, and the guy from the Proud Boys was pretty enlightening, but also they're also very real interviews and with very real people, such as the individual, the guy with the one lung is what you kind of called him. But those stories aren't being told anymore, but those are the real stories of Detroit.
That's funny you say it, because when you're doing a broadcast, and I do deal with it every day, okay, what do we look like? What are we doing? What's missing? So we do have newsmakers, like the founder of the Proud Boys. I knew the dude back in New York in the day. The congresswoman from Detroit who did not support impeachment until the Democrats avalanched on her and she changed her mind. But I'm thinking, when you look at these roundtables on CNN and Fox, and again, the influencers, they're not really reporters. They're reading the Washington Post and then commenting on it. So I say, what's missing? Well, regular people. Why on these panels aren't there nursing home attendants? What are they, stupid? They're not stupid. They're the ones that actually know. And then the reporters talk to them. And then the influencers talk about what the reporters had to say about talking to someone doing the work. So we have nursing home attendants. A guy locked up at the Wayne County Jail with one lung in a raging case of COVID. They took him to the hospital, thought he was going to die, discharged him. He didn't die, and he's drifting through suburban and metro Detroit, spreading COVID everywhere. He's pulling through the sandwich counter at the Sunoco. It's ridiculous. So I'm just trying to think out of the box. You zig in, you zig out. Somebody of, stature, politician, and then somebody who really knows. So over the holidays, I profiled Frank, an 83-year-old guy who every day since May goes to the window where his wife is in the nursing home and suffers from dementia. And now that it's cold, he's brought a pop-up tent, and it's beautiful. And it's just a love story, nothing political, but guys like Frank, guys like One Lung Forta, people like the Congresswoman, just mixing it up, because I don't think anybody else is doing it. I love people.
And with that, Charlie, though, I want you to touch on your reporting into the nursing homes during COVID-19, because from where I sit and from what I can see, you're the only person that is actually digging into the realities behind the COVID-19 numbers and the state numbers. They aren't always what they appear to be.
No. So let's back up to what we were just talking about to get into that. Another one is, I think about Calcutta, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Detroit, Michigan, where these things are flaming up. Who actually picks up the dead? I went out with the corpse collector. He makes $30 a body. We went out. I went into the nursing homes with him. We moved bodies. So I need to get a look and to get through the BS of numbers. And long story short, whether it's Governor Whitmer, Governor Cuomo, Governor DeWine, right? All of them. You'll notice across the country, whether it's open or it's closed, these particular states, the deaths, minimum half the deaths are in long-term care facilities, nursing homes, homes for the aged, adult foster care. We know where COVID strikes, and we know how COVID gets in there. It's from the underpaid and overworked aides, attendants, and nurses who work 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They take the bus to work. What have we done? We went from the idea of invading the beaches of Normandy to actually doing it in 7 months. We're in month 10 of this. We haven't fixed the nursing homes. The heating and cooling systems still intermingle. There are not requirements for separate staff. They are suggestions. We've dumped no money into them. They're privately owned by hedge funds. We knew before the pandemic that 400,000 people a year died in nursing homes from infection. So we know that they're already cattle pens. What did we do in Michigan? We didn't force them to take old people with COVID cases back. We encouraged it through money. We financially incentivized it. So when the governor gives you the line, we never forced them. No, you gave them $5,000 a bed and $200 a day. Who took them in? The worst of the worst nursing homes in this state. We have the 3rd worst nursing home system as judged by the federal government in the country. We have the 2nd most abusive nursing home system in the country as judged by the federal government. So this thing hits and we're not doing anything. So let's look at the data really quickly, Ron, if I don't lose you. We were all complaining about this. Remember back in April, May, June, where's the data? Congress wants it, the legislature wants it. We didn't get it. Michigan only started counting deaths and cases in the deaths. Let's just say deaths. In July, when the federal government required it. Now what you see every week, right, is a death count with an asterisk. And the asterisk says these are also deaths from vital records searches. What does that mean? That means we're looking at death certificates from the past and determining, yeah, it was probably COVID. So what we're doing is we're counting dead people as newly dead, meaning we're diminishing what happened, we're overcounting what's happening now, and we never got a true accounting of what the true first real spike was in the early summer and late spring. This one's completely different. You don't see the bodies. They're about a third. You'll see the cases are exponential, 4 times the cases, right? But testing's increased 12 times. Long story short, all I'm asking, watch this, watch me balance left versus right. Watch this. I say the governor didn't do enough. You didn't do enough. That's our great shame and sin. End of life care. We see that it's broken. We must fix it. You see what happens in America when we don't fix things. When we don't fix dams and we don't fix nursing homes and the police departments, I can go on and on and on. Look what happens.
In the jails.
Oh, yes.
The jails are a petri dish. There are certain things at the very beginning of this. We knew it's like, it's going to happen, but yet when it doesn't happen and it took, I think, and I don't even know if with the death of Benny Napoleon, are they truly going to change some of the things that are going on at the Wayne County Jail? Because at the end of the day, in all honesty, while he was, the head of, the Wayne County, was he actually going into the jail system? Is that where he got COVID? We don't know, but you were on the jail system from the very beginning.
Yeah, look, I've been doing the jails forever, like Ficano and all the graft that goes through that sheriff's department. It's a ton of graft. And the biggest public works project going on right now in southeastern Michigan is the new super jail. In the time of Black Lives Matter, we're building a super jail. In January, I wrote about this. Governor Whitmer just signed the legislation. There was a great big, blue ribbon task force about incarcerating people, what we do about the jail system in Michigan. Nobody from the governor's task force stepped a loafer inside the Wayne County Jail, which is the biggest system in the state. I went in there in January, knowing COVID was coming, took a look around. It has never in 40 years passed a health inspection, despite the fact that it's overseen by the courts because of its miserable health conditions. And then I did it in February. Then I went in there the day after the governor shut the state down on March 10th and said, what about COVID? Then it starts rolling. We lost the commander of the maximum security. We lost the 2 main doctors. We lost the chief corporal. Now we lost the sheriff. Over 200 deputies caught this stuff, and we were just letting people out. So a woman, mother of an inmate, is worried about it. They're not getting tested. They don't have masks. You remember all those videos. She writes to the governor's office. The governor's office writes back, we have no jurisdiction over the county jails. Now let me do that again. That's exactly what you have jurisdiction over. Your jurisdiction is health, the nursing homes, state funded, state inspected. It's the jails. It's the prisons, right? It's the unemployment system. So tell me, what is it that we fixed in 10 months to mitigate what's going on? Well, here's what we did. We shut the freaking restaurants down with no data, because if you look at the data, they're doing it by cases and not by the number of people. So for instance, you go to a bar someplace in upper Oakland County, and one outbreak, right, would be 2 or more people not related to each other. So a server has it and passes it on to the drinker. You have 2. That's a case. But at Michigan State, they listed 1 case. How many people within that? Because we do track schools now. 2,182. So by math, bad math, 50 in my example, 50% of the cases, cluster cases, are coming from restaurants, and 50% are coming from colleges. If you do it by the amount of people, that's not even a decimal point at the restaurants. It's the colleges. This the governor's responsible for, Department of Education. So I just don't get it. COVID is very real. I knew Benny Napoleon. I know at least a dozen people that died. We don't have a vaccine for this super flu. But for the life of me, doing this, oh, here's Flint. That one's coming soon too, by the way. Doing all of this, it's like I'm just doing the data and the real life, and I don't get it. And watch what's going to happen when everybody gets the shot, right? We're not going to fix the nursing homes. We're not going to fix the jails. People are going to be broke, and the cops are underfunded, and there's going to be hell to pay. Sorry to be a bummer, but somebody's got to tell you, and we got to do better than this.
But on top of that, too, when we talk about journalism, how can we get better in journalism? Is the nonprofit or the podcast way, is this going to be the future of journalism? Because you and I both know, look, I'm not sitting here for a reason. I want to be out in the mainstream doing important work, but you get shut down. There are powerful players in the entity that shuts people down. And so the future of journalism, is it going to be to get these stories told and to train journalists to look beyond the press release and to look at the numbers? Is that going to be in a nonprofit sector, and can that work?
I don't know. I just got to be honest. I don't know. I mean, how long is somebody going to fund you to lose money? You know, you notice, like the New York Post, that thing doesn't make money. That's owned by Rupert Murdoch. The Washington Post, I don't care what they say. That thing doesn't make money. That's owned by Jeff Bezos. We can go on. New York Times, I would say watch the circulation drop now that, you know, Trump's not fueling your clicks. I don't know what the future is. All I know is this. You got to try harder. You just got to be more clever. Think about what's interesting. Don't think for a minute, I'm not in my bed going, man, am I an old man? Am I irrelevant? I mean, I'll admit it. I'll tell you stuff. No, because then when my subconscious goes away and it's me again, that's also me. We fight a lot, me and me, you know. But no, I'm good for the game today. Today I'm good for the game because I'm alive. And it is a racket. Journalism's a racket. It's about getting your attention. And I know that I got about 10 minutes of your attention, and it better be something you didn't know, because that's why you want news, something news, and it better be interesting. So I think that's where it goes. Where it ends up, I don't know. I just know where I'm at the moment. But again, don't quit on the people. Stop. Journalists are people that can type without looking. Journalists, right? Reporters drink with the public in public, and journalists drink with the public officials in private. So don't think for a minute that you're part of that clique, the billionaires and the party heads. If you're a reporter, you belong to the people. And if you don't, you're going to die out. Simple as that.
You know, one thing I always said is when they were like, you're under deadline, pre-write the story. And you were like, I can't write a story I haven't been a part of. People tell their stories. Like, I'm not the story. They are their story. And if I pre-write it, I'm doing them a disjustice. Like, there's something in the way they say or a word they say, and that sparks their story. Their story is not about me. I can't sit here and make up stories. They are their story. And I can't tell that story until I feel them and feel their story.
100%. Like, what's the angle here, right? What's interesting? So I think people know this. That's also part of what happened to media journalism. We let people see how the sausage is made. I think people are aware of that, right? Because if you look at any press conference, here's how you tell them apart. The print reporters are rocking back and forth, typing like this, like monkeys, trying to press the right button to get the banana chip out of the machine, right? That's what they do. The TV people are on their cell phones. I bet you they're playing Candy Crush. What they're waiting for is the print reporter to get the story that's pretty much pre-written, except for the quotes live from the press conference, waiting for it to ding over to their phone so they can basically copy it. How do I know this? I've been a TV reporter, I've been a print reporter, and I despise that work. It's the worst. I just can't do it. And then you'll see, well, maybe we're getting inside baseball, Ronnie, but there'll be a press conference at 1. By 2 o'clock online, the newspapers posted it, and the story's this long. You know how long it takes to write 2,000 words? 2,000 words is like 7 typed pages. And it got done in 45 minutes? That's because it's what you said. It was pre-written, it was boring, it didn't make sense, and nobody's going to read it.
And just so people don't know, like they may not know, anytime if you're a reporter and you go to a press conference, you ask for the prepared remarks ahead of time. Sometimes they give them, sometimes they don't. But that was a pretty common thing. Hey, just give me, but I'm not going to publish them until A, B, C, D, and E. But it gives you time to basically get it back to the people to put it out to the public and this, that, and the other. But Charlie, you know, we need to have you on and just do an hour show with you because you know you're my hero. And if people don't know, everyone here in Metro Detroit knows who you are, but you're a brilliant writer amongst everything else that you do, but you care about the people. And it's to your heart. And that's the one thing that I think you and I have in common, even in the slightest bit, is it's never about the story, it's about the people. And I hope everyone takes that away. So again, people tend to ask me, what's Charlie LeDuff doing now? Because if they don't see you on Fox 2, they need to understand that I think you have a bigger platform, because I can't wait to tune in to every Friday. It seems to take, a day or two before your Facebook Live actually hits the podcast, though?
No, we changed that, just because we were making so much news out of it that we would go Facebook Live, like that's our we're birthing a TV show here. We would have that Friday, and our day to post would be Sunday. But by the time Sunday came around, national local media were cannibalizing our story. So it's going around the world, and then the original interview or whatever isn't out there yet. So yeah, it's Fridays.
So Fridays, Facebook Live, but also do us a favor, everyone that cares about journalism and you care about having a real, true voice in journalism and what's actually happening here in Metro Detroit in the state of Michigan, please do us a favor and download the No BS Newshour on your podcast with Charlie LeDuff. And I will say, I know that you wrote, I have 2 of your 4 books. I will say this is my favorite one. It's Detroit, an American Autopsy. Charlie LeDuff, it's still available out there as well. And you have the, we'll just say it, show.
Show, yeah. My agent got really mad at me. He goes, you know how many sales we lost by you calling it that? And I'm like, you didn't say anything. I didn't know.
But we love it anyway. Charlie, it's been great talking to you, and I miss you, my friend.
You're
and we
as
need
smart
to get
as
together
ever
soon.
and as beautiful as ever. No doubt about it. Thank you for having me.
But I miss you, but I love what you're doing, and thank you for continuing to be the voice of the people of Detroit, because you're an important voice, a very important voice that we cannot lose. So thank you for staying here in Detroit.
One plug. Listen, you can go to Google, nobsnewshour.com. Friday, watch this. It's coming in Flint, and I'm ahead of it because I never quit on you, Flint. Even though you're not Oakland County, we have our cousins and brothers. My brother lives in Flint. I got it. Justice.
Well, and that's the one thing, though, while we're the Oakland County Megacast, we know that it goes beyond Oakland County. It goes throughout the state of Michigan, because what happens in Lansing and Flint happens to us here in Oakland County as well.
We got to pay for Flint now. We're paying for Flint.
Oh, we're paying big time. So it's great to have you with us. And I want to say my apologies to our other guests. We're running a little bit long, but we're going to take a quick break and we'll continue here on the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs, even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary. We've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Perry tested positive for COVID-19. Emma was exposed to a friend who's positive. Willa's waiting on test results. After any contact with COVID-19, or if you test positive, stay home for at least 10 days. If you live with others, keep your distance and wear a mask. Help Michigan contain COVID-19. Visit michigan.gov/contain-COVID.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Great to have you with us again on the Oakland County Megacast. We want to say thank you. I'm sorry to our next few guests because we did run a little bit long with Charlie LeDuff, but an important conversation. We were excited to have him as a first-time guest here on the Megacast. And for those that are tuning in for the very first time, we want to let you know that Tyler and I are here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon. You can catch us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Channel 15 on Comcast 99. If you have AT&T, if you're out driving around, you can also tune us in on the radio, and that's going to be 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. For so many of us, especially myself, words open up worlds. There was nothing more exciting for me than that Saturday morning visit to the local library. But the words also open up opportunities. But it's estimated 32 million adults here in America are illiterate. Fixing the problem starts in childhood. And I'm excited to talk with our next guest, Pamela Good. She's the president with the nonprofit organization Beyond Basics. Pamela, thank you for being with us here on the Oakland County Megacast.
Oh, it's our pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I loved reading about your organization. For those that may not be familiar, give us a little bit of background. How did you get started in this?
Well, it's an interesting story. I mean, 20 years ago, as part of a school project for my young children, I delivered coats downtown to Herman Rogers Academy, right there at the Southfield Road and Joy Road. And it was that day that when I went into that school, my eyes were opened up to a completely different community, a wonderful one, but one that had so many struggles. And just decided that I would try to do more. And so it was really birthed out of that encounter.
One encounter, and it changes the footprint of your life. But what was your background prior to this?
Well, you know, I called myself a jack of all trades, master of none. But when I, a few years later, incorporated as a nonprofit, I knew that I had been given a little bit of experience in all the varieties of starting a business. So, you know, I had accounting background and I had business background, but I also pursued child psychology, child development. And there's a lot of things that we don't understand in different communities. And I think having that background really gave me a heart for wanting just to help people.
So tell us about Beyond Basics now. Where are you now, and what is your goal going into 2021, which is, I think everyone's excited to leave 2020 behind us.
That's right. It actually was a blessing year for us, but I think I'll just comment about the journey. You know, initially we went in just to bring extras to kids and really formatted the foundation of what we are today. We brought in academic enrichment programs, reading and writing, art, Make a Difference days. We partnered with people from all walks of life to come in and gave them access to kids to do, you know, really valuable stuff with. It wasn't until 2003-04 that we realized that the kids, by and large, they didn't just need help with reading, they needed to learn to read. And it took 4 years of implementing state-of-the-art initiatives and failing every year before we got grade level movement. That was in 2008. And so I say we really became a full-fledged literacy organization when we were able to tutor kids in a program and get them reading on average in 6 weeks. And we've just perfected that since then.
But we just went through a 2020, a year unlike any other year that we've been through. How important is it for organizations such as yourself coming out of the pandemic, which we hope we're coming out of the pandemic, because I feel like so many kids have been left behind during this crisis.
I think it's important to note that we've been leaving our kids behind in schools for decades. Illiteracy is a crisis in our inner city. 85% of the kids attending Detroit, Public, Pontiac, Lansing, Flint, communities like this, 85% of those kids do not read well enough to access education. You have that crisis moving into the suburbs. We have kids in the suburbs. If you look at Northville, Birmingham, Rochester Hills, Grosse Pointe, you have anywhere from 15 to 30% of the kids that are more than 2 grade levels behind and can't read well. So we've been leaving our kids behind, for a long time. What this crisis has done is that it's just laying it right out there now. You can't even pretend to help them in school. They're going home, and there isn't any way that they can participate online from home if they can't read. So we've lost a tremendous amount of kids.
That is heartbreaking when I think about that and I hear about that. Pamela Good with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. She's the president for Beyond Basics. What do you think we can do in 2021 to fix the problem now that we've recognized the problem?
Well, I know what works to get kids reading wherever they live. Kids with learning differences in the suburbs, it could be ADHD, dyslexia, autism, just never learning, generational issues and poverty. But we know what it takes. It takes knowing where a child, how far they're behind, and working intensively one-on-one with them. We have to, as a community, demand that our educational model be changed to add this intensive care work. We need to fund getting all those kids who can't read reading, but then our model has to change so that if you're more than a grade level behind, they're offering you what you need. And that isn't happening right now. I do know that in terms of this, this year of 2020, I think that in some ways it's been a year of 2020 vision, if you will. We've been able to see a lot of problems that we have, our problems and weaknesses in poverty and in schools and with health and institutions where we haven't been caring for our kids and others. We have to get past just symptom relief and the image of a solution. We've got to get in there and do the heavy lifting. And when it comes to literacy, that means our community coming together and funding every child learning to read. And when we do that, it changes everything. Illiteracy is connected to incarceration. It's connected to joblessness. We have a social service budget in Michigan that is almost 50%. That means almost 50% of our dollars, our tax dollars in this state, are going in large part to care for people that we never bothered to get reading in the first place. And they can't succeed.
Wow, and maybe if we had addressed those issues early on, that would change their path in life, which could be the good thing that comes out of COVID-19.
Yeah, yes, I think so. Everybody's strapped right now. What we did, I remember clearly, March 12th, schools closed. Typically we go to the schools and we run our programs. We go where kids show up. But we didn't have access to them then. So our team put together our one-on-one tutoring online. We're on a virtual platform now. And it's turned out to be a blessing in many ways. We have access to kids throughout the day, not just the school day. It's for the older kids, the high school kids, which we do a lot of work with. It's been more private for them to be in that one-on-one tutoring setting. The attendance has been better. Our results have been what we came to expect in person. So it also gives us access to kids anywhere. Typically we raise dollars and we go into Detroit and Pontiac and places and tutor kids for free. But with this model, we can have parents who need this help for their kids just come and pay for it, and we can assign them a tutor online. So I think that some good things have come out of it. And I hope to see much more than solutions for illiteracy come out of this, because we know we need help in a lot of areas.
It's such an important topic, and really one that we all need to get involved in, because it does impact our entire community. So we love what you're doing there at Beyond Basics. Pamela Good, she's the president at Beyond Basics. Are you taking volunteers right now, or is that on hold during the pandemic?
Our staff and our tutors are paid. They're working an hour a day, 5 days a week with kids. So they're paid staff, and we need tutors right now. So I would say go to our website, beyondbasics.org. And if you're interested in tutoring, you can tutor from your home now, because we teach you to do the online platform. And we need really quality adults to work with our kids. And we're not so much the volunteer piece right now. It's logistically hard for families because they're online all day with school. So to be online again for volunteering is just kind of tough for them. But typically we have volunteers that help us.
Pamela Good, she's with us. She's the president of Beyond Basics. So we so appreciate your time, but even more so, we appreciate what you and your team members are doing, because it's such an important issue and an important topic to be discussed, even more so now during the pandemic. Like, I can't imagine how close some of these worlds must be for individuals that can't read, because for me, words are a way to escape for hours on end into other worlds. And I can't imagine not having that available to me.
Yes. I've really learned what it's like to be illiterate in our society through kids who've learned to read. And from some of the high school kids who have spent a long time as a non-reader before, they would describe it as being blind to words. So if you go out into your world and you think of every word you see, that you don't see that. One young man was afraid to leave far from his house because he didn't think he could find his way back because he couldn't read the street signs. So we really take for granted how reading connects us to anything that you want to do in the future. And I think we have a moral obligation to get, especially kids that are showing up to school today. I mean, we're really lying to them that they're getting an education if they're not literate to be able to embrace it. And so this is an epidemic in America. Our educational model is the same here as it is across this nation. And we need to wake up to this problem, because when kids graduate after they've been in school for 12 years and they can't read, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? So we have the power. There is a solution. I said this is an epidemic that comes with a solution. We never flattened the curve on this issue for our educators. It's time that we step in and we help them. And it literally changes everything when we are getting kids literate, letting them access education we're already paying for, and watch them blossom. Watch them blossom.
With that, I love what you stand for. And so we want to encourage anyone out there, if you're looking for an organization to support right now, Beyond Basics, it is an organization that is changing the life and changing the world. But one thing I hope, Pam, that comes out of this crisis and this pandemic is recognizing the issue of being illiterate in a world that we're relying on technology. So thank you so much to your team, and also to everyone in your time and your effort that you put into trying to raise awareness around this effort.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. You're really helping us spark a literacy revolution. And I would say advocate. If everyone can just advocate that these kids can, it'll move us forward.
Thank you so much for your time. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, just a few minutes left in the show, and we'll be checking in with the Bowling Association. How are they doing? They have been allowed to reopen, but it's not business as usual. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's going to be who?
And whether we wear green
or blue.
But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the Medical Director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1, turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2, apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3, wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4, rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And step 5, dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6, if you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Our apologies to our guests for running a little bit long, but we want to go ahead and try to bring in Bo Gogern. He is the executive director for the Bowling Centers Association of Michigan, because in late December, the governor did announce that bowling alleys are going to be allowed to be one of the businesses to reopen. But since then, it's not business as usual because there are restrictions. Bo, how are things going right now?
Not very good at all, actually. The restrictions are so severe, I would say that half of our members didn't even open up their doors. With those restrictions, it actually costs more money to open up, turn on your lights and turn your heat on than it is for the amount of income that we could possibly get.
And so I think the general public hears the words allowed to reopen, but they're not thinking about all the things that it takes behind the scenes to turn on that open sign.
That would be correct. We're hearing reports of those operators that are open, having guests come in without the knowledge of what those restrictions are and get very frustrated and have to turn around and leave because they can't bowl together based on the MDHHS orders.
So where do things stand right now? Because I know the biggest thing with some of the bowling alleys had to do with the bowling leagues. So are the leagues allowed to operate?
Well, that's a great point, Ronnie. The problem there is there's not actually stated in the orders that we can't have leagues. But if you go line by line item, a lot of folks have interpreted that the only people that can bowl on a given lane can only come from the same household. Now, the unique situation that we have in Michigan that happened through the first shutdown, that's happening again, is the vagueness of these orders and the interpretations. And what we're finding is there are health inspectors in different counties that are reacting or interpreting those orders differently. So I'm here in Midland County with my 24-lane center, and I have a bowling center that's located in Bay County, but still within Midland city limits, our competitors. And our two different health inspectors could interpret those orders differently, where one could operate far different than the other and have an advantage or disadvantage, however you want to look at it.
Right, because we know that they were allowed to reopen, but without concessions. But there's, the difference in there. And I do apologize because we're running late, but we'll have you on the show again pretty soon. So we have about a minute left. What do you want the general public to know about what's going on with your industry right now? Is it going to survive?
Yes, at the end of the day, it'll survive as long as that we get open here very shortly. And I'm optimistic with the vaccines that are available. So this 8-month shutdown that we had the first time around isn't going to happen again to that area. If with the state funding and the federal funding that seems to be coming down the pipeline here shortly, I think most of our operators can get through this this time until the vaccine's out there. The biggest hurdle that we have moving forward is consumer confidence. And if we can get the messaging from our media folks to be a little bit more optimistic that it's safe to go out and play and get back to normal, then we will survive. If they continue to do the fear mongering, it's going to be a tough road to halt.
Well, let's hope that they all do survive. Again, my deepest apologies for running late on the show, but we do know that the radio stations do tune off at the top of the hour. So we want to say thank you to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. And again, Bo, we do appreciate your time. He's with the Associations of Michigan's bowling centers. So thank you for being with us. We hope to have you on again today. This has been the Tuesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast.